I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at God Derby here with Pablo Schreiber, who stars as the iconic Master Chief in Halo. So, Pablo, it must have been a huge undertaking for you to bring this character to life because, let's face it, in the games, Master Chief, there's not a lot to him. It doesn't have a lot of depth. In this show, it's a completely different story. So, was his crisis of identity, morality, his spiritual beliefs, and consequently this self-discovery quest. Was that your way into this guy?
Well, it was Stephen Kane's way in, who was our showrunner for season one. Yeah, that was the premise that I was pitched as a first season for the show. The sort of the awakening, and humanization of this iconic character who has been, behind the helmet and under the armor for his entirety, 20 some years of the history of the game. So yeah, the pitch to me was that we were going to try to humanize this guy by breaking down all the barriers, change the relationship between the viewer and the character. Whereas the character was made for a first-person shooter video game, you're meant to believe that you're him. So, as you said in the introduction, he's not completely fleshed out. A lot of the subtle details and personality traits, quirks, things like that are left open and blank so that you can fill those aspects in with your own personality when you're playing the game.
Yeah.
Obviously, that doesn't work for a TV show, and so you want to flesh out those details on your own. And the decision was made to use that premise to humanize the guy. So yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah, because honestly, you take on a role like this and you think, it could just be a shoot 'em up. That sounds like a lot of fun anyway, but to be able to explore the character, it gives us all an opportunity, all the fans who are familiar with the game and the character. Even, I knew nothing about Halo, but I still knew who Master Chief was. That's really bizarre that it's actually a very well-known character. So you're taking on a lot of this preconceived ideas about who he's going to be. Was there any pressure from you and the showrunners to make sure that the fans were happy, but also to take it in your own direction, because this is its own thing? It's not just the game on the TV screen.
Yeah, I think it was both, and that balance is going to be an ongoing balance between, pleasing longtime fans and giving them the show that they were hoping for and wanting, and the balance that you have to balance that against is bringing in new audience and pulling in people who are going to follow this character for what's underneath and what's brewing and all the things that we're trying to fill in. Because they're not going to bring their 20 years of history of the game into the viewing experience. So those are, and also, as you also alluded to, the journey of artistic choice, and for season one, the captain of our ship was Stephen Kane, and he was making the choices for where the directions of the season would go. And for season two, we have a new showrunner named David Weiner, and really, really excited to get to work with him. And scripts are coming in already, and I can't tell you how excited I am. It's a whole new direction, and it's just amazing. So I'm really thrilled to get back and start working in the next month or so.
Oh, that is so exciting. I was going to ask you about season two. I wasn't sure whether production had started. I'm sure they're in pre-production. So where are we at, and what are you most looking forward to for season two?
Where we're at is in the script writing process and in pre-production. I've seen more than half of the season at this point. And it's, as I said, it's going so incredibly well. It's all of the things I think, we learned a lot in season one about what we were good at, what we weren't so good at, things that worked, things that didn't work, all of those things. And we're really trying as best we can to apply those lessons, And one of the biggest things is the scripts and where we're starting from. The new showrunner who's on board is just has an amazing sense of artistry, and his version of this story is one that I just can't wait to tell.
That's so cool, because obviously your first season's all about world building and you're setting up all these characters. Second season's where you can really start to delve into something really special. So we are super excited about that. Now, talk about Master Chief. He's so imposing, his massive presence, and obviously the incredible armor and weaponry help you get into that mindset. But what else are you doing when it comes to your posture, your cadence, the sound of your voice, your imposing gait to fully flesh out how he takes up space, because I just find him larger than life. And a lot of that is you, not necessarily just the armor.
Yeah, well, and the armor gives you a lot for sure. It's no slouch where that's concerned. That suit of Mjolnir, the first time I stepped in it, it was obvious that it's a force to be reckoned with. It does add not just inches, which it does both vertical and horizontal. Makes you bigger in every direction, but it also, the way it makes you stand, there's like a core engagement that you have to have at all times just to move it around, just because it's about 55 pounds or so, and to move it in a way that looks athletic and fast, and powerful,
effortless.
In order to bring it alive like that, you really have to have this kind of core engagement at all times. So that alone informs the way that you stand, because you have to stand with good posture, you have to be core engaged, you have to be at attention, or that suit is going to, it's going to be wearing you. You're not going to be wearing it. So that's certainly part of it, is all of that stuff that the suit does to you. And then, there's also just the research part of, a lifelong soldier, a guy who's been physically augmented and altered to be the, best weapon humanity has in this battle against the alien invasion. So he spent his entire life as a super weapon, so there's a removal from the idea of humanity and from other humans, that he has. That's like a disconnect, sort of an emotional disconnect from other human beings and his own humanity, obviously. And there's a readiness at all times. All of those things, I think, inform the physicality and also the emotional life of the character.
Wow. It never occurred to me that wearing that suit, you'd need to be so core engaged. I'm just thinking, if I had that on, I would just flop over immediately. I have zero core engagement. It's such a physically demanding role. Obviously, you trained your ass off to be in that great shape, with all those intricately choreographed fight scenes and falls and so forth. So did you actually really fully appreciate how physically demanding this role would end up being for you?
No, because I didn't know what the suit was going to feel like. That was really the trick of, or the part I did. I could not plan for that. I knew it was going to be tough, and I was prepared for that. I've had other grueling gigs. When I was shooting, 13 hours was really hard physically. Also, Den of Thieves, I think, was even harder, just because of the amount of action, the amount I was on screen, and then I was training so hard. So I'd like wake up in the morning and do like a couple hours of like an hour of cardio, go to set, shoot for like 14 hours, and then go to the gym and lift weights afterwards. So I was working like 17, 18-hour days, 6 days a week for like 3 months. So I was ready for that. I was ready, but it's a whole new level this is a level of respect that I've come to have for people who work on these kinds of projects. When you're number one, it's a whole new thing, because you're not, first of all, just the amount you're on screen is like, there's no downtime, right? You're always on, but then there's also a responsibility you have to everybody on the set, second season, I'm going back as a producer. So it's another level of responsibility, right? Where every time I'm on set, I'm not just bringing myself and my desire for the show to be good. I'm bringing a work ethic that has to be looked at and emulated, and everything filters down from the top. So it's definitely a new role for me, but a challenge that I've really, really loved and have really grown into, and am just really grateful to get to be a part of.
Yeah. I always hear about from actors who are number one on the call sheet that is a huge responsibility. You're setting the tone on set. You are setting an example, especially for younger actors and more inexperienced people. But also, as you mentioned, you're becoming a producer. What will that entail for you? Because you're already going to be so exhausted from this long shoot that you're about to commence, but you're also now having this other role where you have a say in how the show is going to look and feel. So what do you think about that?
For me, it was important because in as much of an acknowledgement of the fact that I want to make this show the best version of itself. And it removes one more layer for me of being able to do that. You know, if I'm a producer on it, then I know that people will listen to what I have to say. And whether or not, you know, I'm going to get my way every time, at least my voice will be a part of the number of voices that are there making decisions. And for me, it's just really hard to work really hard at something, to work so hard at something and not be able to affect it as much as you would want, because no matter what you do, there's always so many layers of it, right? And so it was just a removal of one more layer of making sure that I had the ability to create the kind of show that I want to be a part of and that I'm going to be proud of, you know?
Yeah, that is so exciting. So I wanted to talk about how there's been like, it was a bit divisive about whether Master Chief should be just this guy in a suit or a guy who actually has emotions and feelings and so forth, especially when he touches the artifact. Early on in the season, we see a lot of his background, which is fascinating, actually. And I found that the most compelling part, because this show is not just about shooting aliens, it's about characters. Mm-hmm. So were you really looking forward to really being able to dig deep and can kind of go deep on who this guy is and all of his demons and baggage?
Yeah, I am looking forward to going even deeper, you know, as the seasons progress, for sure. That's the unfolding of the story, you know. And I've said this before, but there is some there's been some difficulty for some portions of the audience to accept or to go along with the ride, because it wasn't the character that they have, you know, and know and love, or they felt that it was far from the character that they've grown to know and love. And so there's a bit of this, you know, dissonance, cognitive dissonance that happens when you're watching something, wanting it to be something else, and it's not matching up with what you were hoping or expecting. And what I'm looking forward to is, as the seasons go on, for the story to play out, because that's incredibly important, you know, and for the character, I believe he's going to become closer to what people were expecting him to be. And at the same time, you know, as we saw at the end of season 1, there's also the question of at what cost, right? You know, by the end of season 1, you got the Master Chief that I think you were really hoping for, or some people were really hoping for, right? In the disconnected, you know, battle machine. But at what cost did that come, right? We essentially lost John, right? It's not going to be that black and white going forward, but there's always going to be that question of how much of your humanity you have to give up to be that effective soldier and to be that battle weapon. But I am interested to watch, you know, for the fans also to watch, you know, the character come into some of the traits and characteristics that they love from the Master Chief, because, you know, the characters grow over the course of a multi-season project. That's the hope, right? And we had to start this guy from somewhere, and we had to break, you know, the first season can be very uncomfortable because we were really trying to reshift the relationship and the alliance between the audience and the character, you know, from that person viewer into what it is now, which is a long form TV series.
That's right, and because you need space to develop and move, right? And so I'm amazed that anyone would have an issue with it. I think and not that there was many people who did have an issue with it, but I did pick up on a few people who were complaining. But you're always going to cop that, particularly in sci-fi. The fans are crazy in a good way, and they have lots of opinions.
There's so much passion for the project, you know. That's the thing.
They're passionate.
The Halo fans are incredibly passionate, you know, and they love their IP, and they want it to be treated well. And the thing is, I love it too, and I want it to be treated well. So as seasons go on, I'm looking forward to those two things coming together a little bit.
That's right. And you're putting your, you know, heart and soul into this project. You're not wanting to do it for nothing. There's something else that I really loved about the show, and that is not only the sci-fi stuff, but the military stuff. It's a really compelling exploration of the effects of war on soldiers, the lasting impacts of PTSD and that isolating grief and like guilt and shame that comes with moral injury. And I haven't really seen that being done as well as it has been done in this show before. And I just wonder if that occurred to you when you were developing the character and then, of course, playing him.
That was one of the main reasons I took the job, honestly. For me, I've done a bunch of work in and around the military community with, as I said, 13 Hours and Den of Thieves. I trained extensively with people for those roles. A lot of those people who I trained with have become lifelong friends. I work pretty closely with an organization called Headstrong that works with veterans who come back with PTSD and they're basically a service that can help you get your head right, get your head better. And so it's an idea that's near and dear to my heart, and one that I really wanted to engage with, because, you know, if you're going to make a show that's about the ultimate human weapon, then you got to talk about the other side of it. You know, you got to talk about the effects of war, and that's something that I'm really interested in. And you know, I was happy with some of the ways that we approached it in the first season. And it's areas that I'm really excited about in future seasons, just to deal with it in subtle ways that it deserves and nuanced ways that it deserves. And because so often when you see stories that are about PTSD, they can tend and trend towards melodrama, and staying away from those aspects, staying away from like overt patriotism and all those kinds of things is really important as far as I'm concerned when you're dealing with that, and being able to deal with those issues in all the shades of nuance and shades of gray that they deserve is what I'm really excited about. Over the course of a long series, we're going to be able to do a lot of stuff with that.
That's terrible. That's so interesting. I mean, it doesn't have to be a jingoistic black and white saga about this guy who's broken. Like, we're going to actually, I can already see the groundwork that I hope we will see flesh out in future seasons. There's something else I've always wanted to ask you, and that is, and this happens with some actors depending on, you know, what they're acting with. You have to have the camera so close onto your eyes, the side here, you know, you're in the helmet. Is that confronting? Because you have nowhere to hide there, and every glimmer in your eye is telling us something about what Master Chief's thinking or doing. That is, surely it can't be that easy.
You're talking about the in-helmet camera?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're in the helmet. Yeah, those are interesting. Those are ones that were that Jonathan, who directed episode 5 and 6, and then episode 8 and 9, he was largely responsible. They started in episode 4 with a director called Rule, but we really used them in 5, started using them in 5, and it was only really to get to the payoff of the finale, because I always thought it was really important that we were inside the helmet for the finale, that if you couldn't be inside the helmet for the finale, you wouldn't get the whole scope of the sacrifice and all of the stuff that he was going through. So that's where those shots come from. And, you know, we played around with them a bunch. There was a bunch of experimentation around what the best version of that shot was going to be, and how to do it. And it is, you know, they ended up being on locked off. So we had these helmets on just so you could see the edge of the helmet. And it was actually a locked off camera just right up in your face. And you actually had to have your helmet touching the front of the camera. So it really was, the camera was like right up in your face. But, you know, God, there's so many challenges in filmmaking. And that just feels like one other one, you know. At that point, like what's a camera up in your face when you're trying to communicate? You know, there's so many other things in your way too. Like,
true, that's true. That's good attitude. Before we go, for your role on Orange Is the New Black, your character was so diabolical, and yet weirdly seemed to really resonate with fans. Like, I loved Pornstache, and then you got a much-deserved Emmy nomination, which I remember at Golden, because we care about this stuff, we were cheering for that nomination.
Oh, nice.
What do you most vividly recall about that whole experience of being an Emmy nominee and being this character that people loved to hate?
It was an interesting time, man. I had 2 roles that came out around the same time. There was William Lewis on Law and Order SVU and Pornstache from Orange Is the New Black, and they were both these like hideous people, like the worst of the worst, and one was more for dramatic effect with the SVU, and the other was used a little more for comedy. And I think the reason why Pornstache was, resonated and he was a character you love to hate rather than just a character you hate is what he was used for. It's season one, especially, when we were first making the show, nobody knew what the show was. Not even Genji, who was writing it. I don't think she knew what it was going to be. Netflix, I don't think they knew what they had. It just happened to hit, in this way that nobody really expected. But when we were doing season one, the responsibility of that character, I feel like there was a huge responsibility in terms of the tone of the show, right? Like he was at one point, he was the villain of the season. So you had to have enough actual weight and scariness, to carry the villain aspect. But he also, through the comedy that we used him for, he also taught the audience a lot about what the tone of the show was, and let you know that it was okay to laugh, at certain things. And that it was all tonally, that it wasn't straightforward, that it was all a little heightened, it was elevated, it wasn't straight up drama, that everything was going to be just a little bit off, And I think Pornstache was really the character that was used to assess, maybe Crazy Eyes as well. It was maybe like Pornstache and Crazy Eyes were like the two characters that elevated the experience into something that was not just straightforward, right? And so I think because of that, because he was used to such in so many different directions and to such effect, he really resonated with the audience. And then I just got lucky. I was away doing another job, but they wanted me to come back, so they just wrote me this amazing 3-episode arc for the second season. That's the one I got nominated for. And it's funny because I actually got nominated for best drama, guest actor. And the whole arc was comedy. Like those 3 episodes, it was just all comedy. It was when Pornstache comes back and he's like, Pornstache is back, bitches. All that stuff. It was so funny. But that's why I felt like it was maybe the combination of the 2 roles. It was kind of like, well, we got to fit you in somewhere. We'll just give you.
That's right. Anyway, you'll take it.
I was not. I was not unhappy.
I can't imagine you would be.
It was a fantastic moment, and again, in the course of a 25-year career that started with The Wire, and then there was all kinds of downtime between that. I mean, I was working the whole time, but there's these ebbs and flows, and Orange is the New Black was definitely a big ebb or a big flow. The tide was high on that one. It was a great time. I really enjoyed it, really loved it. And and it feels nice to be busy and back again. This season felt so wonderful to get to bring 2 projects, that were on TV at the same time with Candy and with Halo, that were so different, and that felt again like a real blessing to be able to put those 2 out and have them on TV at the same time. So
I know, and if I may say, it just shows you really impressive range, Pablo, and I mean that. Candy is a completely different story, and Halo now, it's broke the record on Paramount Plus for the biggest premiere globally. It beat 1883, which is something. So look, you should be thrilled and super proud. And thanks for your time today, mate. Really, really impressive work. I've had so much fun watching Halo, and I can't wait for season 2.
Nice. Well, thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it, Rob. And thanks for having me on.